first fissure appeared on a Tuesday, disguised as a casual remark. I was on my knees, my hands buried in the rich, dark earth, tending to the heirloom roses that framed the wraparound porch of my home on Magnolia Lane. Each bush was a memory. The peace rose. Arthur planted the day we moved in, the crimson Mr. Lincoln for our 10th anniversary, the delicate New Dawn climber for my 60th birthday, a gift to myself after a decade of navigating widowhood. My granddaughter, Chloe, lay sprawled on the porch swing, a vision of youthful indolence. Her phone was an extension of her hand, and she was narrating her life to her thousands of followers in a voice I barely recognized. A flat, performativity drawl. "Yeah, the grounds are okay," she said, panning the camera across the sprawling lawn, the ancient oak, the gardens I had nurtured for 40 years. "It's got like old lady potential. Needs a serious update, obviously. A pool over there. A proper guest house instead of that tacky potting shed. But the bones are good. It'll be a fun project for when it's mine." The pruning shears in my hand stilled. The sharp steel blades caught the sun, winking. "When it's mine." The words didn't feel like words. They felt like a physical violation, a cold hand reaching into my chest and squeezing. I looked at her. This beautiful 17-year-old stranger with my husband's eyes and her mother's sense of entitlement, and felt the ground beneath me. Ground I thought was solid, turned to shifting sand. She hadn't said it with malice, but with the serene, unshakable certainty of a queen discussing the borders of her future queendom. It was a fact, as immutable as the tides. I said nothing. The habit of a lifetime, the keeping of peace, the swallowing of slights, was a deep, worn groove in my soul. I simply snipped another spent bloom, the click of the shears sounding like a gunshot in the quiet afternoon. But something deep within me, something that had been dormant for decades, stirred and opened a single watchful eye. My name is Eleanor Vance. I am 76 years old. To my family, I am Nana Ellie, a benign, slightly anachronistic presence. They see the frayed cardigans I wear for comfort, not thrift. They taste the simple from-scratch meals and assume a simple from-scratch mind. They see the lack of a smartphone, the preference for books over tablets, the landline with its coiled cord, and they paint a picture of a woman whose world had shrunk to the dimensions of her garden and her memories. A placeholder, a custodian. They never saw the ledgers. They never knew that the great Arthur Vance, the titan of industry they so revered, was a man of spectacular vision and equally spectacular financial misjudgment. The fortune he'd inherited was a magnificent, leaking vessel by the time he passed, taken from us by a sudden aneurysm 20 years ago. He left me with a mountain of secret debt. This beautiful, burdensome white elephant of a house and a 14-year-old son who looked at me with his father's eyes, expecting me to be the rock I no longer felt I could be. The family myth was of Arthur the provider, struck down in his prime. The truth was Eleanor the salvager, who pulled the wreckage from the flames. I hadn't been pruning roses for 40 years out of mere hobby. I had been, in those quiet, sun-drenched hours, thinking, planning, and fighting a silent war. The peace they saw on my face was the intense concentration of a general surveying a map. I took the pittance that remained after the debts were settled, a sum they would have considered a paltry embarrassment, and with a ferocity born of sheer terror and a fierce love for my home, I built an empire in the shadows. While they thought I was baking apple pies for church fundraisers, I was teaching myself the intricate dance of arbitrage. While they assumed I was lost in sentimental novels, I was devouring financial reports, my reading glasses perched on my nose as I analyzed commodity futures and emerging markets. I started with the only capital I had that was truly mine, a collection of antique jewelry left to me by my own mother. I sold it piece by piece, my heart aching with each transaction, but my resolve hardening. The final piece, a stunning Art Deco emerald bracelet, seeded my first major foray into the stock market. I found I had a knack for it, a cold, clear-eyed understanding of risk and reward that my warm-hearted, impulsive Arthur had always lacked. It was a part of myself I never knew existed, a streak of pure, unemotional steel. Over 2 decades, I didn't just recover our wealth. I multiplied it 100-fold. My portfolio, managed under the impeccably discreet umbrella of Elysian Holdings, was a sprawling, robust ecosystem of tech startups, commercial real estate, and blue-chip stocks. The tacky potting shed, Chloe so derided, was in fact a temperature-controlled secure office housing a state-of-the-art server farm and a terminal that connected me to the pulsating heart of global finance. The quaint roll-top desk in the library, its first drawer contained a biometric lock. Behind it lay financial statements that would have rendered my family speechless. They had no idea. To them, I was just the keeper of the keys, the gentle guardian of an inheritance they viewed as their birthright, patiently waiting for me to finish my vigil. The incident with Chloe was the first crack in my carefully maintained facade. The real earthquake, however, arrived on a perfect golden Saturday afternoon in May. My son David and his wife Samantha were visiting from the city. David, my only child, had inherited his father's charm and his love for the grand gesture, but unfortunately, also his financial short-sightedness. He ran a nebulous lifestyle brand called Apex Living, which seemed to consist of him giving TEDx talks about disruption and posting artfully filtered photographs of his espresso. Samantha, a woman whose kindness was as carefully curated as her designer wardrobe, was the product of old, dwindling money. She wore her lineage like a crown and never missed an opportunity to remind me, with a pitying smile, of the comforts my simple life lacked. We were in the garden, the scent of honeysuckle and freshly cut grass hanging heavy in the warm air. I served them iced tea in the tall frosted glasses they liked. "Mother," David began, using the formal address that always preceded a request for money. "We need to talk about Chloe's future." I took a slow sip of my tea. "Oh, St. Mary's Academy is fine for a basic education," Samantha chimed in, her voice like polished glass. "But it doesn't provide the polish needed for the circles she'll move in. We've found an incredible institution in Switzerland, Institut Le Rochelle. It's where European aristocracy send their daughters." "It sounds very exclusive," I said, my voice neutral. "It's the most exclusive," David affirmed, leaning forward. "The networking opportunities alone are worth the tuition. She'd be classmates with future CEOs, ambassadors. The von Hessens send all their girls there." He said the name von Hessen as if it were a magical incantation that would unlock my purse strings. "I'm sure it's lovely," I repeated. There was a pause, the kind that grows heavy with unspoken expectation. David cleared his throat. "The thing is, Mother, the tuition. It's substantial. $250,000 a year. And with Apex Living in a crucial growth phase, all our capital is reinvested. Liquidity is tight." "I see," I said, placing my glass on the wrought iron table with a soft click. "We were hoping," he continued, finally meeting my eyes with a look of practiced sincerity, "that you could help and advance on the inheritance. This house and the land, it's just sitting here. We could take out a loan against it, get Chloe set up and pay it back once the business hits its next milestone." There it was, the unspoken contract, laid bare on the garden table between the iced tea and the plate of lemon shortbread. My home was not my home. It was their liquid asset, and I was the stubborn old woman sitting on the vault. "David," I said, my voice gentle but firm, "this house is not a line of credit. It is the only home I've known for 40 years. It's where I raised you. It's where your father—" I trailed off, the memory of Arthur still a tender spot. "And I am not dead yet." Samantha's smile didn't falter, but it became fixed, a brittle mannequin's grin. Oh, Eleanor, don't be so dramatic. No one is saying that. We're talking about Chloe's future. Surely you want what's best for your only granddaughter. It's not like you have any other use for the money. The condescension in her voice was a physical slap. It's not like you have any other use for the money. In that moment, the lens through which they saw me snapped into perfect, cruel focus. My life was a meaningless, cost-effective interim between my husband's death and their windfall. My needs, my desires, my legacy, none of it mattered. I was a placeholder. The answer is no, David, I said, my voice losing its softness, gaining the texture of flint. I will not take a loan against this house, and I will not be funding a Swiss finishing school. The silence that followed was profound, broken only by the buzz of a bumblebee among the lavender. David's face flushed a mottled, ugly red. Mother, be reasonable. What are you going to do with it all? Sit here and let the world pass you by? Let this property decay out of sheer sentimentality? This is for family, is it? I asked, looking directly at him, my gaze steady. Or is it for a status symbol? Since when does a 17-year-old need finishing? She's a human being, not a piece of furniture. Samantha stood up so abruptly. Her chair screeched against the flagstones. I will not have you insult my daughter's potential, after everything we've done for you. What have you done for me, Samantha? I asked, the question slipping out, laced with a genuine decades-old curiosity. You visit on major holidays, you eat the food I cook, you make comments about the wasted potential of my home. What exactly is the everything? David shot to his feet, his fists clenched at his sides. That's enough, Mother. This is exactly what Dad meant when he said you could be so small-minded, so stubborn. You never understood the bigger picture, the importance of legacy. The world seemed to tilt, the vibrant colors of the garden swimming before my eyes. What did you say? He looked momentarily chastened, but the anger, fueled by thwarted entitlement, quickly overrode it. He knew. He knew you'd cling to this place like a lifeline, too sentimental to see its real value. He told me to be patient with you, that one day, when it was mine, I could make something truly great of it. I felt the air leave my lungs in a slow, painful sigh. Arthur, my Arthur, who had held me in his arms as I sobbed with fear over the final notices, who had told me I was the strongest person he knew. Had he, in his private moments with our son, painted me as a simpleton, a mere guardian of his legacy, rather than the savior of it. The betrayal, though 2 decades old, felt fresh and raw. I placed my teacup on the table with a quiet, final click. The sound was a full stop, the end of a chapter I had been rereading for far too long. I think you should both leave, I said, my voice dangerously calm. Gladly, Samantha sniffed, grabbing her $2,000 handbag as if it were a shield. Come on, David. We don't need her petty, small-minded charity. It's not charity I'm offering, I said, as they stalked towards their sleek German convertible. It's a lesson, and you're about to learn it. They left in a spray of gravel, the angry roar of the engine a fitting soundtrack to their departure. I stood alone in my garden, the sanctuary I had built with love and sweat and tears. The rose bushes now seemed like silent sentinels. The ancient oak, under which Arthur had gotten down on one knee, was no longer a monument to lost love, but a witness to a present, searing betrayal. That night, I didn't sleep. I wrapped myself in a shawl and walked through the silent, moonlit house, my fingers trailing over familiar surfaces. The banister David had slid down as a boy, the hearth where we'd hung our stockings, the window seat where I'd read him stories. The memories were now tinged with a new, painful hue. Were they all a lie? Had I been living in a museum dedicated to a fantasy? I ended up in the potting shed, my true sanctuary, my command center. The familiar hum of the servers was a soothing balm. I typed in my passwords, the blue light of the monitors illuminating my determined face. I pulled up the files I had secretly maintained on my family for years, not out of malice, but out of a growing, gnawing worry that had now been vindicated. I saw the unvarnished truth I had refused to face. The loans for Apex Living, totaling over $500,000, listed as non-recoverable. The mortgage on their Tribeca brownstone that I'd covertly covered for the first 7 years. The exorbitant monthly credit card bills for Samantha and Chloe. Designer clothes, 5-star hotels, spa retreats, all automatically paid from an Elysian Holdings account, discreetly categorized as family administrative expenses. They were living a life of luxury, funded entirely by my invisible, unacknowledged labor, all while mocking the hands that fed them. The final unforgivable straw came 4 days later. I received a call from my portfolio manager, Alana Chen, a brilliant, fiercely loyal woman who had been my right hand for 15 years. "Eleanor," she said, her voice uncharacteristically tense. "We've got a red flag, a significant one." "Go on," I said, my heart beginning a slow, heavy thud. "There's been a formal inquiry into the ownership and financial structure of Elysian Holdings, a deep one, from a law firm called Huxley and Crest. They've been pushing hard, using some creative legal theories about undisclosed assets from probate cases. They're representing a David Vance. The betrayal was so complete, so cold-blooded, it was almost magnificent. He wasn't just waiting patiently for me to die. He was actively probing the walls of my fortress, looking for a weak spot, a secret door. He'd apparently stumbled upon the name Elysian in some financial journal or database and, with the unearned confidence of the profoundly entitled, was trying to see if he could lay claim to it, perhaps arguing it was a hidden asset of his father's estate that I had illegally concealed. I thanked Alana, my voice remarkably steady, and hung up. I walked to the kitchen window, looking out at the dawn breaking over the dewy lawn, the peace I had fought so hard to preserve, the family unity I had cherished above all else, was a beautiful, intricate illusion. The mirage had evaporated, leaving only the harsh, empty desert. It was time. Time to stop being Eleanor the grandmother, the mother-in-law, the widow. It was time to be Eleanor of Elysian. The plan formed in my mind not in a hot rush of anger, but with a glacial, terrifying clarity. They wanted a performance? I would give them a masterpiece. They saw me as a weak, fading, sentimental old woman. I would show them precisely what a weak, fading, sentimental old woman was capable of. I called a family meeting. I used the landline, making my voice sound frail, a little thin, with a carefully placed tremor. I told David I hadn't been feeling well, that the doctor's appointment had left me shaken, and that I'd been thinking a lot about the future. I said I had important news. I could hear the barely concealed, voracious excitement in his voice. He thought I was finally, blessedly, capitulating. They arrived on Sunday afternoon, a picture of familial concern painted over avarice. David, Samantha, and a bored-looking Chloe, glued to her phone. The house was spotless, but I had staged it with the care of a theater director. I'd placed a sleek modern walker, borrowed from a friend who'd had knee surgery, conspicuously by the bottom of the stairs. I'd left a few official-looking letters from the cardiology department at the city hospital on the kitchen counter, half hidden under a Time magazine. The stage was set for the final act of Nana Ellie. We sat in the formal living room, a space that always felt a little stiff and unused, the plastic still on the lampshades. I had poured them glasses of sweet tea, my hands trembling slightly for effect. "Mother, you said you had news," David prompted, unable to contain himself for more than a minute. He leaned forward, his expression a mask of solicitous concern. "Are you feeling all right? You look pale." I've been better, dear," I said, my voice a fragile whisper. I took a deep, shuddering breath, playing the part of the overwhelmed old woman to perfection. "The doctor, he says my heart is, well, it's tired. We have to be careful. No stress." Samantha leaned forward, her eyes gleaming with a predatory kind of sympathy. "Oh, Eleanor, you should have told us. What did he say exactly? What's the prognosis? He said I need to simplify my life, to downsize. I looked down at my hands, twisting a tissue in my lap. It's made me realize I can't manage this big old place anymore. The stairs, the garden, the upkeep. It's too much for me. It's time. I let the words hang in the air, ripe and heavy. I could feel their anticipation, a palpable, hungry energy in the room. Chloe even looked up from her phone. Her interest momentarily piqued. So, I continued looking at David with what I hoped was a watery, grateful expression. I've decided to simplify things. I'm moving. David's face was a masterpiece of suppressed triumph. He tried to look concerned, but the light in his eyes was unmistakable. Moving? Mother, where? A nice assisted living community? We can help you look. Oh, something like that, I said vaguely, waving a dismissive hand. A small, manageable apartment. Something modern. But that leaves the question of the house. I sighed, a long, weary sound. This beautiful house. Of course, David said, his voice dripping with false solemnity. But don't you worry about a thing. Samantha and I will handle everything. We'll get the best possible price for it. The market is hot right now. That's just it, dear, I said, blinking slowly, as if trying to clear my vision. I've already handled it. The room went preternaturally silent. Even the grandfather clock in the hall seemed to hold its breath. What do you mean you've handled it? Samantha asked, her voice sharp, losing its veneer of concern. I've found a wonderful organization, I said, my voice gaining a little strength, just enough to sound convinced and slightly dreamy. The Arthur Vance Foundation for the Arts. They're going to turn the house into a retreat for struggling artists. A living memorial to your father. A place for creativity and beauty. Isn't that just wonderful? The look on their faces was worth every second of the heartache, every sleepless night, every swallowed insult. It was a slow-motion car crash of emotions. First, utter confusion, then dawning disbelief, and finally, pure, unadulterated, furious horror. The what? David sputtered, his face draining of all color. He shot to his feet. Mother, what in God's name are you talking about? There is no Arthur Vance Foundation. There is now, dear, I said sweetly. I founded it. Just last week. I've already signed the papers. The house and the 20 acres it sits on are being transferred to the foundation. It's what your father would have wanted. He so loved the arts. I gave a sentimental little sigh. He hated the arts. David shouted, his voice cracking with rage. He called ballet a bunch of people jumping around in tights. He thought opera was cats being strangled. This is insane. You've lost your mind. You can't do this. It's my house, David, I said, my voice hardening just a fraction, the steel beginning to show beneath the velvet. I can do whatever I want with it, and I want it to be a sanctuary. It's our inheritance, Samantha shrieked, leaping to her feet, her composure shattering into a million pieces. Her face was contorted, ugly. You senile, selfish old woman. You're throwing away our future, our daughter's future. David, do something. Chloe just stared at me, her mouth a perfect O of shock, her phone clattering to the Persian rug. The vision of her future summer house, her Instagram backdrop, her pool party venue, had just evaporated into thin air. There's more, I said, and now I let the facade fall away completely. I dropped the tissue. I straightened my spine, my shoulders going back. The frail, trembling old woman vanished, replaced by a figure of imposing quiet authority. My voice changed, shedding its quaver, becoming the voice I used in boardrooms, the one that could make venture capitalists 30 years my junior sit up straight. It was steel wrapped in silk, and it was utterly terrifying to them. They froze, staring at me as if I had just removed a mask. The transformation was so sudden, so absolute, it was jarring. Sit down, David, I commanded. He sat, as if his strings had been cut. The Arthur Vance Foundation for the Arts is, of course, a fiction, I said calmly, as if discussing the weather. A necessary one for this little pedagogical exercise, but the transfer of this primary asset is very real. It is the first step. I picked up a sleek remote control from the side table and pressed a button. The large antique-style mirror on the wall flickered, then transformed into a high-resolution monitor. On it, displayed in elegant, minimalist graphics, was a diagram of my financial empire, Elysian Holdings. The total asset valuation was a number with so many zeros, it seemed almost fictional. Their eyes were glued to the screen, their brains struggling to process the staggering figures listed there. "What? What is this?" David whispered, his face ashen. He looked like a man who had just seen a ghost. "This, David," I said, my voice clear and cold, "is what you were really trying to inherit. This is what you were probing for with your lawyers at Huxley and Crest." The blood drained from his face completely. "How did you—" "This," I continued, overriding his stammering, "is the product of the last 20 years of my life, the work I did after your brilliant, beloved father nearly bankrupted us with his terrible investments and his hidden debts. The work that paid off those debts, that put you through Exeter and Stanford, that has been funding your apex living, the mortgage on your brownstone, and your wife's rather extravagant taste for the last decade." I clicked the remote. The screen changed to a detailed, damning spreadsheet. It listed in chronological order every single loan, every mortgage payment, every credit card payment, hundreds of thousands of dollars flowing from Elysian directly into their lavish lifestyle. "You," Samantha gasped, pointing a trembling, accusatory finger at me. "You're Elysian, you?" "I am Eleanor of Elysian," I said, the name feeling powerful and right on my tongue. "And as of 9:01 this morning, I have dissolved the Family Support Division. The automatic payments have stopped. Your credit cards, which were on my corporate account, have been permanently cancelled. The mortgage on your Tribeca brownstone? The deed is in the name of Elysian Holdings. You have 30 days to secure new financing at the current market rate, which I believe is around 7%, or you will be required to vacate the premises." The room erupted into chaos. "You can't do this to us. I'm your son, your flesh and blood," David yelled, his face contorted with a rage so profound it was almost fascinating. He took a step toward me, and for a second I thought he might actually strike me. "Are you?" I asked, my voice dropping to a deadly whisper. "A son doesn't hire lawyers to investigate his mother. A son doesn't laugh with his wife about his mother's supposed dementia. A son doesn't see his mother as a line item on a balance sheet, the obstacle between him and his money." I looked at him, and for the first time I felt not love, not pain, but a vast, immeasurable disappointment. "You are a stranger to me, a greedy, venal stranger." I stood up, my posture ramrod straight. I was Eleanor of Elysian, and I was reclaiming my kingdom, my legacy, and my self-respect. You thought I was just the help, the caretaker, the placeholder. You saw my simplicity as stupidity, my contentment as complacency, my love as a weakness to be exploited. You underestimated me at every single turn. I walked towards the door to the hall, then turned back for a final, devastating moment. The house is not yours. The money is not yours. It never was. You built your lives on a foundation of sand, on the assumption that you were entitled to the fruits of a labor you never saw and a mind you never respected. I looked at my son, my heart a small cold stone in my chest. You asked me what I was going to do with it all, David. I'm going to live. Truly, wildly, magnificently life. I'm going to see the northern lights from a private glass igloo in Finland. I'm going to have lunch at that little vineyard in Tuscany your father and I loved. I'm going to donate millions to fund STEM education for girls in developing countries. I am going to have a glorious, adventurous, and utterly fulfilling life. And you will not be in it. You are excommunicated from my world. I opened the door. "Now get out of my house," They left, shell-shocked and sputtering, their threats and pleas as empty as the values they held dear. David was crying, great, heaving sobs of self-pity. Samantha was hissing vitriol, her beautiful face ugly with rage. Chloe was just stunned, a doll whose strings had been cut. I closed the door behind them. The heavy oak door thudded shut with a finality that echoed through the silent house. I stood in the hallway, the silence feeling not like loneliness, but like a profound echoing peace. The great, heavy, suffocating weight of their expectation was finally, blessedly, lifted. I walked back into my living room, to the monitor still displaying the evidence of my hidden, powerful life. With a few clicks, I transferred $10 million to a new charitable foundation I had established, one dedicated to providing legal and financial resources for elderly women who had been financially abused or marginalized by their families. I named it, with a touch of defiant irony, the Eleanor Foundation. Then I picked up the phone, my secure, encrypted line, and called Alana. "Alana," I said, a genuine, unforced smile finally gracing my lips for the first time in years. "Clear my schedule for the next 6 months, and book the jet. I'm thinking of spending the spring in Tuscany, then maybe a safari in Botswana. It's time I started using my own resources." I hung up and walked to the window. The sun was setting, casting long golden shadows across the lawn I loved so deeply. The rose bushes were in full glorious bloom, their petals a deep, defiant, victorious crimson. They had weathered the storm, the neglect, the condescension just as I had, and now, drenched in the evening light, they were more beautiful than ever, ready not just to survive, but to flourish. I was finally free. The story we have told is fictional, but is based on some real events. The names and places have been changed to protect the identity of those involved. We're not sharing this to pass judgment, but in the hope that someone listens and pauses to think. How many mothers are suffering in silence inside their own homes? I'm so curious. If you were in my place, what would you do? Would you choose to stay silent to keep the peace? Or would you dare to face it all to get your voice back? I want to know what you think, because every story is a candle that can light the way for someone else. God always blesses.